Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris, Dr. Mindbumder McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me for this episode is Brian, Hideous Experiment Hickey. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at issue 10 of Paul Allor's G.I. Joe comic from IDW Publishing. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, shall we? Delve into the twisted psyche of Dr. Mindbender as he begins the next horrific stage of development for Cobra's automaton soldiers. When Mindbender's experiments turn against him, can he find anyone to come to his aid in the den of vipers that is Cobra? And what it actually says in the issue is, Cobra has taken command of the world to fight back G.I. Joe recruits civilians, training them as spies, assassins and saboteurs. Recently, G.I. Joe has focused its efforts on Cobra's battle android troopers, striking a series of heavy blows against the death machines, including derailing Cobra Commander's ability to build more. That has to be the first time in history that IDW synopsis has been better than the one that's in the actual issue. Amazing. We have, as always, writer Paul Allor, artist Chris Evenhouse, colours Brittany Peer, letters Neil Uyatake, and editor Bobby Kernow for this one. And let's get into those covers before we get into the issue, Brian. Cover A, art by Chris Evenhouse, and we've got this gorgeous Baroness with the vipers behind her, and that gorgeous kind of red and black and kind of like this like grey blue kind of colour scheme. It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it?
Oh my god, this is fantastic.
I think this is my favourite of the Evenhouse covers so far, actually.
I've seen some amazing Baroness illustrations over the decades.
I think for me, she's not over-sexualised. I think it's just the fact that she just looks really cool in this shot.
Chris Evenhouse, all of his female characters look badass.
Yeah.
They look great. They still look sexy as well. But, you know, like you say, they're not porn stars.
Yeah.
And this is how you draw the Baroness. She looks absolutely badass and awesome in every possible good way. This in fact, this whole issue is what I would consider to be visual ecstasy.
Vextasy. Yeah. I agree, and I think what I really like about it is that use of like the shadow being like all the shadows on her being like that red light almost, you know, that around her body, and some of it kind of turns into what would be actually part of her arm, and some of it is like a border around her, and some of it is I find it really cool. It's like a really nice, very effective kind of way of lighting her. And yeah, I love the fact that her shades are red as well. So when she's kind of pulling them down over a nose, I just think that's really a cool. It's a really cool way to draw the Baroness here, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a stunning cover. When Chris gets to do the covers, I mean, he knocks them out of the park. They're absolutely beautiful, and it's an art. Chris is an artist that I've come to really love, and I want to start getting, you know, more comics with his work in them outside of this G.I. Joe run, because I think his artwork is just magnificent. Absolutely.
Well, there we go. That's the first cover. Absolute beauty. There's a nice simplicity to it, yet when you look at it, there's actually a lot more detail there than you kind of give it credit for initially. You know, a lot of like shadowing on her actual kind of tunic that she's wearing, or like kind of like you just see like a lot in there that you don't necessarily notice at first glance. Then obviously we have cover B. Let's move on to that one with Freddie Williams second on art and Jeremy Colwell on colours. Now, this one to me strikes me as something from a future issue as opposed to this issue. And obviously we've got Roadblock and Scarlet in the foreground taking out some vipers, and then they're at the foot of some stairs, and as you look up the stairs you get this little kind of doorway. The doors open and you see vipers, Dr. Mindbender, and Dr. Mindbender's performing some sort of like hideous like experiment, or he's about to torture Tiger, who's kind of tied up on a chair.
Great cover. I mean, we've had a few covers now from Freddie Williams II, and they're pretty gritty. And in terms of the, I don't necessarily mean in terms of subject matter, but in terms of the artwork style, it's a grittier kind of style from say what Chris has done, but it's really, really nice artwork. pretty visceral here, the way Roadblock and Scarlet are kind of taking out these Vipers. And of course, you can only imagine what's about to happen to Tiger under the as he's literally put under the microscope by Dr. Mindbender.
I like that, Dr. Mindbender is obviously in the original kind of run was like a dentist originally, like that's his origin. And it looks like he's about to perform some sort of like dental surgery on him, doesn't it? But yeah, there's a lot going on in that. That has nothing to do with the issue. But maybe we might see something in the future on that one. We'll never know. Anyway, moving on, we have a retailer incentive cover, art by David Tinto, colours by Brittany Peer. And this is Tiger and Scarlet in the kind of gym area of the G.I. Joe HQ. And almost like in that mode of they're about to have that. It's almost taken from that scene way back in the issues where where she was training him, or effectively just beating him up every single time. And like that, it just seems to be just before they get into that fight, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That was my thoughts when I first saw this. This is a flashback to where Scarlet is like, yeah, come on then, take a punch. And she basically uses Tiger as her own personal punching bag while she grieves for Duke.
Yeah, and again, it's a nice shot. I wouldn't say it doesn't strike me necessarily as a cover. It looks very much like a panel from an issue, but it's still beautifully done, beautifully detailed. There's loads of real, like when you really again get into looking at what is actually done, like with the colors and with the lines and everything, some absolutely beautiful details in there. It's still a gorgeous piece of work, and again doesn't really relate to what's going on in this issue, but as we've seen in the I call it the John Royal effect, and that's what I'm going to call it from now on. But out of all those covers, which one's your favorite, just out of interest? I think I know which one it is.
It's got to be Chris's cover. I mean, without hands down, it's absolutely the best,
Absolutely. I have to agree with that. Again, simple but effective, and very, very effective in that. Now, one other thing I will mention about this issue is that it is actually titled Viper, but with a VII at the beginning, so it's 7. Now, there's a few kind of connotations with the number 7 in G.I. Joe. You've got the Fred series. Fred 7 obviously became Cobra Commander for a little while in the Marvel run, because it was the Crimson Guards. So they weren't clones, but they were, plastic. They had plastic surgery to all look the same, to blend into society, and they're all blonde-haired, blue-eyed males. There was a real hint. I mean, there was a real political. There was a very interesting undertone, shall we say, from Larry in that particular story arc. Now, obviously, 7 has that connotation. In this particular issue, it is the number of the experiment victim, shall we say. Now, Cobra are developing what are effectively bio creatures to be used, I guess, in tandem with their bat technology. That's what they're experimenting towards, I guess. And using human subjects who have passed away recently, which was really dark. We get this opening scene of the kind of, without giving any spoilers away in the first issue, the first thing we're talking about, the kind of like assistant to Dr. Mindbender is walking through this like laboratory, very sci-fi, very Arise Serpentor Arise, with all of these kind of, it looks like Luke in the Bacta tank, doesn't it, in Star Wars? Yes. That kind of like creatures in these tubes, these luminescent tubes in liquid, and it's all very matrixy and freaky, and one of them puts the hand against the inside of the tube, and it kind of makes her jump a little bit, and she's like, oh, calm down, which I think is quite cute. But yeah, I mean, initial thoughts when you first see this?
This is a stunning page to open up this story. And the real hero in this particular issue for me in terms of the creative team is Brittany Peer.
Oh, God, yes.
Her work on this is outstanding. And, and the Alor Evenhouse Peer team in general, it was a great combo. I love when these guys all come together in this comic. But I think Brittany Peer's work on this particular issue is just stunning. And you see this front page. It's the blues, the blacks, the greens. It's just brilliantly and beautifully coloured. It's lovely, lovely work.
There's always a really solid colour scheme with Brittany. Like, it's always so well done. And it just complements Chris's artwork perfectly, as you mentioned. Now we have Dr. Mindbender and the Baroness are discussing this new phase of experiments. So they're standing over Subject 7, who's on this kind of like very scientific sci-fi gurney with what looks like one of those kind of like CT scanners that maybe would possibly run across the whole table, which does remind me of, I think it's Retaliation, where Storm Shadow is getting rehabilitated in the Arashikage temple, and the same kind of device is kind of trying to fix him. So I don't think it's a homage to that, but I'm finding things that aren't necessarily connected in any way, shape, or form here. But yeah, so you're having this conversation between Baroness and Mindbender, and she is very impatient with Mindbender's progress, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, the gist of the conversation is like she's straight in accusing him. You're wasting our time and Cobra's money. It's not working. You failed. And he's pushing back, saying, "No, that's not true. You know, we're getting there." And really, what they're trying to do is come up with organic brains for their battle android troopers.
Yeah.
And as you kind of said there earlier, Chris, they were using subjects that had fallen in battle, and I immediately had a flashback to issue number, was it 3 or 4, where Mindbender is looking at the body of Duke.
Yeah.
And Major Blood has brought the body in, and he's saying, "I could have done so much."
Yeah. Why did you shoot him in the head? Yeah.
And this is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's talking about here.
It's amazing how it's come full circle to that. Yeah, totally.
You know, and of course, it ends with, you know, this conversation between the Baroness and Mindbender ends with her kind of storming off, saying, "We're going to have to, you know, get results, or we're going to cut our losses." And the Baroness storming out with her kind of entourage, going, "I hate science and scientists."
Yeah, I know. And then before she can continue what she was talking about, we switch over to I suppose a stakeout detail where you've got Tiger and Frontier. I always usually say Flint here, so I'm glad I've said Frontier from the off. They're basically staking out the building, and they've clearly got, you know, either we're being led to believe at the moment they're there for the pure reason of spying on Mindbender, following the Baroness, and so on and so forth. They're kind of, you know, keeping an eye on this particular laboratory. And, you know, they're talking, you know, back and forth, what have you. And Jinx comes up, which is quite interesting, doesn't it? Like, you know, her, you know, the fact that, are we going to talk about the fact that why she left? And he says, like, I know why, but, you know, let's continue what we're actually doing. Let's focus on the job in hand here. So it's interesting that we're getting that Jinx thing dropped in there again, isn't it?
What's great is that it keeps Jinx in, you know, to the forefront for us as the reader. You know, in the story, we're reminded that she's part of this overall kind of story happening. And clearly, it hasn't been told to Tiger or Frontier why she left, because that's, you know, Tiger says it's been 6 months and they still won't tell us why she left. So they don't understand her reasons for kind of walking out. Well, I think she was kicked out by Scarlet. Yeah. So they're not even getting like an accurate kind of, you know, update from Scarlet, and that's another nice kind of character detail that could be played with down the line. You know, Scarlet just being far too, you know, management behind closed doors and not really communicating with her team. But as we get to the end of this page, something really creepy happens, and Subject 7 decides to sit up while Mindbender and his assistant aren't looking. And that's whoa.
Yeah, I know. And this is really cool, because obviously this brings in that kind of like horror element where, you know, each issue has had something about it, some sort of theme about it, or some sort of genre specific theme about it, where you had, you know, like the PTSD kind of Scarlet issue. There was so much in there about, you know, mental health and all that, but it was done in such a dramatic way without being like packed full of action. It was very drama-esque. This particular issue has that horror element to it. So in, you know, and some of the issues have been action movies, some of them have been espionage movies. You know, you've got these like really cool genre-specific themes in each kind of issue, and they all stand alone in a really interesting way. And yeah, this one has got that horror attached to it. And obviously this Frankenstein's monster, you know, to come up with some sort of like very similar kind of vibe, starts attacking Mindbender and his assistant, grabs Mindbender by the throat and throws him to the side. The assistant almost gave it away, punches, Subject 7 in the face, but does nothing, and she just grabs the head and smashes it into the gurney.
This is how you do a silent issue. Oh my God, that one page.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Big time. And then you get, Mindbender trying to kind of subdue her again with some gas. Again, he's thrown over, over his shoulder, and she just looks at him and she says, "Why?" Because this particular subject is clearly female, and he goes like, "Why?" For the glory of Cobra and the advancement of the human race. That's why. And she's like, "No, why me? Why was I chosen?" And he's like, "Oh, well, because you were there." And that really throws her. She's like, I was, and then she just like loses it. She runs at him. The assistant kind of tackles her. Again, there's loads of movement going on here, loads of dynamic action. And then the subject almost pokes her eyes out. She almost plunges her thumbs into the assistant's eyes.
It's
and then
pretty lethal. Yeah.
And then obviously Mindbender kind of smacks her on the back of the head. And he says, "What's your plan, Subject 7? What's happening after?" And she just runs out of the room. And that's when it's like, what are we going to do? What do we do? And they kind of they initiate the emergency lockdown.
So what we have here is, clearly Subject 7's plan, as Mindbender's assistant points out, is just to get the hell out of here, to escape. But of course, they lock down the facility. Meanwhile, outside we have Tiger. We flash back to Tiger and Frontier. They can't really see what's going on, but they know that something's up. That it's, they can see kind of lights flickering, and they're mindful that, Mindbender never stays working this late. And there's some nice kind of, character interplay here too, whereas Frontier is all business, real serious. Tiger's a little bit more kind of, a bit more lighthearted, so take this job seriously, man.
Yeah. It's because he's actually he's not letting on how serious he is taking the situation. That's what takes Frontier by surprise, I think, because he gives him this rundown of the lights dimmed at the top of the stairs, the basement has gone into lockdown, and he turns to him and he goes, "Really?" He's surprised that Tiger's been able to ascertain that information, it's taken him by surprise. And he's like, "What? We've been tracking, Mindbender for 6 weeks now. I take this job seriously, man." And he's like, "Right." And then that's when the explanation of all that stuff comes through. So it's quite interesting that we get a little insight here of Tiger being more than he seems.
He's able to process a lot of info.
Yeah.
And maybe he's more of just more discerning with how he processes information than Frontier is. Frontier could be just a little bit more brute force. Tiger's a little bit more brains, perhaps,
Yeah. What is also interesting about this is the fact that Tiger believes the actual target that they're after is Mindbender. That's what he believes the target is. And Frontier knows something different. And that's what is kind of, they're pushing it towards something else is happening here, but what could it be? And that's obviously, we get a reveal later on, which is really, really cool. But before that, we see the subject trying to bash the doors down, trying to escape. And this is where we have the assistant and Mindbender having this kind of conversation as to, what is going on, what's the real, the deep meaning behind all this.
So this is where Mindbender reveals, obviously, that they've been working with these particular subjects that were already deceased, that they weren't getting the results. But when they worked with a new subject, a living subject, where he could control how he kind of terminated that subject, he was able to get much better results. So this subject is like his breakthrough in this. Of course, as they're kind of talking all of this through and they're kind of revealing this, Subject 7, realizing that she can't actually escape, starts coming back the other way, and tosses in the most bizarre looking Molotov cocktail I've ever seen.
It's like a brain in a jar Molotov cocktail, isn't it? It's hideous. Yeah, so obviously then that starts this kind of I suppose this sequence where the assistant is trying to she insinuates to Mindbender that she's going to kill this subject. Mindbender's trying to stop her. She's obviously got a gun, the assistant, and it looks like she's about to shoot. But then Mindbender takes the assistant out. He's trying to save the subject because he wants to, obviously this is the most success he's had so far, as everything is on fire around them now. And just as he's trying to put her to sleep and they're struggling, the assistant fires but doesn't shoot them. She shoots a gas tank which takes them, basically knocks them all out. It's the gas tank that he's trying to cover her face with, basically, to knock her out.
Yeah. The colour on that sliver where we have, bang. It's just this whole spread. It's just amazing work.
I love that shot with the three of them and silhouetted in the smoke and the flames is beautiful. Like, they're all in black with like some line work that's kind of etched in, which is effectively just kind of like showing what's behind them, I think. But you've got like Mindbender's monocle. You can see clearly, but everything else is this gorgeous color of pinks and orange and fire, and it's just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
And then of course it goes to black, and then we have the assistant begins to recover consciousness, and the color palette totally changes on this spread. The flames seem to have kind of abated a little bit, and she sees that Subject 7 has the gun, or reaches for the gun, and the assistant says, no, please, no. But Subject 7 says, no, it's not for you, it's for me. Fully intent to kind of to put herself out of her misery. And it's where the assistant begins to reveal a little bit about herself. I've sacrificed everything. I'm on the wrong side of this war. I'm in opposition to my father. I left behind the love of my life. So look, you can get out of here. And she reveals that she deliberately shot the gas tank so to knock everybody out, to give Subject 7 the chance to actually escape. And so that's effectively what she does. She says, look, just get out of here. You're on your own from here. Good luck. That's it.
The really powerful moment of this one, I think, is when she says, I want to, but I'm scared. That's what the subject says. And she says, yeah, well, I can't help you with that. And just opens the door and lets her go. I think it's really hard hitting, because now you've got this poor creature has just now has to just get out, make a sort of what do they do at this point? It's crazy. And then obviously we have the assistant basically cutting off the life support to all of the other subjects in the tubes, and some of them are bashing out the tubes because they're desperately trying to breathe and everything like that. It's really dark and really brutal, isn't it?
It's some pretty savage stuff going on here. Again, the colours are just magnificent. How the colour tone in the tubes changes. It goes from that lush green to this kind of dirtier sort of,
orangey
kind of colour.
Yeah.
It's a really nice touch, and it just changes the whole mood of what's kind of happening in there. And then, Subject 7 is out of the building, spotted by Frontier and by Tiger. And they go, what is that thing? Like a monster? But Subject 7 is now gone, is free, and Frontier's had enough. He's like, I'm going in. If you don't hear from me in 20 minutes, and Tiger responds, yep, burn the entire place to the ground. What? No! Call in backup.
Amazing. Okay, got it. That's funny. I do like that.
And he doesn't even look away from his night sights. He's just looking the whole time. Doesn't even move, which is great.
This is where we get the amazing reveal as well. So Frontier's walking into this laboratory. There are all these he's shocked to see all these people writhing around on the ground. I say people, some bleeding out of the mouth and all sorts. And then one of them grabs his leg and he's about to shoot them. And that's when you hear this voice behind him. Hey. He said, they're dying, they're just dying and desperate, but we're safe, and then Frontier says safe. And they look at each other. He did point the gun at her initially because I don't think he realised who it was initially. And then they embrace and they're kissing. And it's like, what? And then it continues, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep making these choices, each with their own terrible cost. It's just too much. And he says, and you don't have to. You're coming home. You're safe. And we're together again. My love, my life, my Lady J. Oh my goodness. And then it's just, what's funny about this is that I unfortunately knew it was Lady J from the beginning, because Remember when we did that, like that issue when she first appeared, the assistant, the Dr. Mindbender assistant, and we were kind of saying she could be undercover, she could be a Joe, and I'm like, she could be someone like Lady J. It's because I knew fully well that it was Lady J. Paul had actually said to me, and had not had it spoiled. He didn't spoil it for me. I asked him, so I knew going into this that it was Lady J. But how amazing is that reveal? I just thought that was, again, a really good long-term kind of thread has been tied up in a sense.
You know, I was totally taken by surprise when I read that. So I had no idea that this was Lady J. So when that character was revealed, that was, for me, was a real, oh, wow moment. Again, another absolutely cracking episode. In fact, this is, you know, with all respect to Larry and the Real American Hero universe, it's the Aller universe is where it's at. This is the best G.I. Joe for me that's out there right now, and it just goes from strength to strength. The universe is being reinvented, the characters are being reinvented, and that's exactly what I think that the brand needs. This is the benchmark that anything G.I. Joe that's being produced should kind of step up and meet.
I agree on that one. It's absolutely superb. Give me your potatings, buddy.
We're going 10 here, dude, for this one. And that reveal, 10.
I've got to do another Photoshop, thanks. No, I agree. This is an absolute beauty of an issue again. We've got so much kind of like interesting aspects, and something I didn't mention before, but I guess we've got bio vipers here. Like that's, you know, like the bio vipers from, if you think, like, or an homage to bio vipers, if you think from like back in like Renegades, for example. Renegades had these bio vipers which were kind of like, you know, one of them even took over Ripcord, so there was like this kind of like human bio viper kind of hybrid. But then, you know, going even further back, you've got the bio vipers, you've got the cyber vipers from the Marvel run, Mega Marines and stuff like that. So again, you've got some really cool homages in this, and like I said, the use of Seven, I think has to be because of Fred Seven. That's the only connotation I can really think of off the top of my head now. I could be wrong on that one, but again, Paul will probably correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, absolutely brilliant, and I'll give it 5. Because I don't want to have to do some stupid Photoshop again. So I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5. It's an absolute beauty. It is a great series, and yeah, I agree with you on that one, Brian. And
just one little thing I want to add here is a nice tease for the next the Castle Falls issue that's coming up.
Yes.
And you see Roadblock on the cover, and you only see like maybe kind of his face and upper body. You don't really get to see the whole shot. But up on IDW's website, they do reveal the full front cover. And all I can say is, yes.
Marduce. Amazing. Well, Brian, mate, thank you for jumping on yet another Comics Burst. I know time is of the essence with this one, but we've got through a couple. Well, we've got through this one, and we're going to get through IDW's 275 next. So we will have a couple of Comics Bursts soon for you guys, and in the catch-up, we'll be getting back to Dead Game and everything else that we've been missing out on. Disorder of Battle, the next issue of the 276 as well. We need to cover. So yeah, we're battling our way back, aren't we, mate?
We sure are.
Anyway, mate, thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it, pal.
Cheers, bud. My pleasure.
That's it for this instalment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Brian Hickey. See you next time, and as always, Full Force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always, you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show, you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, located at 601 Business Loop 70 West Suite 263, located in the Parkade Center, Columbia, Missouri. You can visit their website at distantplanetcomics.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/distantplanetcomics.